I'd like to call to order the December 15th, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting and start with roll calls, starting to my right.
Kim Keller.
Jake Ward.
Todd Chernick.
Hodge Patel.
Brenda Hamstead.
Note for the record that Don Kurt and Jason Cole are absent. We do have a quorum, however. If you'd please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which one nation, God, indivisible. Item number 4 on our agenda would be approval or amendments to the agenda as published. I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda as published say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passed unanimous. Item number 5 is the approval of our November 2020 meeting minutes. I'd also make a motion to approve those as published.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving our November 2020 meeting minutes as published say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passed unanimous. We'll now move to consideration of primary variances, item number 6 on our agenda. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by that variance applicant. And C, relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good in surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. Before I ask staff to present the first case, make note that this meeting is being recorded as well as live broadcast through Zoom. And I'm understanding we do have some Zoom participants and maybe some folks dialed in as well. If you are on one of our online platforms, note that you're muted and your video is turned off by default to minimize any disruptions. If you'd like to make a comment during the public hearing portions of this meeting, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. If you are calling into the meeting on a phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 on your keypad. Once the moderator calls your name, please unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone button on the bottom of your screen or by pressing *6 on your phone. I'll go through these one more time when we get to public comment portion of one of our upcoming cases. I'd ask staff to start by presenting case V20-24-795 Colonial Lane.
V20-24-795 Colonial Lane. Requested variance is to allow addition on a single-family dwelling to encroach into the rear yard setback. Section 64-416D. The site is a 1.06 acre lot located on the west side of Colonial Lane. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. The final plat for the property was approved in 2001. As per section 416 BA, 60-foot setback is approved for this lot as shown in Exhibit A. The property has a 50-foot rear setback along the northwest property line and 50-foot setback on the southwest property line. The lot is like a triangular shape, which by definition of zoning ordinance only has front and sides. So, the property effectively has only two setbacks: front setback of 60 feet long along Colonial Lane and two side setbacks 25 feet along the interior property lines. The applicant is proposing an addition to the existing house that would encroach the rear setback as shown in Exhibit B. The house is sitting on highest level of the lot. Moreover, the property is sloped and wooded on both sides. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a variance to encroach into rear yard setback. Design Review Board met on November 3rd, 2020 and had following comments. Recommend to approve the variance. Staff response. Part 1. The relief would not offend the spirit of the ordinance because the shape of this property has caused unusual setbacks. The rear setback could be equal to side setback since it is technically on the side of the house and front is curved. Part 2. Because of the topography, the trees, and the previously approved setbacks, the property owner is facing this challenge. The strict application of the ordinance would create unnecessary hardship. Therefore, it is staff's opinion that relief shall be granted. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good because there is a sufficient buffer between the neighboring houses. Part 4. No harm to public safety, health, and safety is likely because of the encroachment into the rear setback. Staff recommends approval of the variance request as shown on the site plan.
Are there any questions for staff? I have one question in clarifying this unusually shaped property. In the determination of front yard and the side yard and the rear yard, as noted in the presentation, can you elaborate on how the legal interpretation has gotten us to this point versus what appears to be a side yard is considered as a rear yard?
Well, I mean, this plat was done, issued prior to the incorporation of the city, so we didn't have review of it. And just looking at it from a practical standpoint, it appears to be a triangular type lot, and so that's what our reasoning was to recommend approval, that the frontage along Colonial Lane would be the front, and then the perpendicular line from the cul-de-sac and the perpendicular line from the lane would, in all intents and purposes, be sides of 25 feet. So it's a little, when it was platted, it appears that it didn't really make sense with the setbacks, to be honest. So.
Okay. So this is clearly an unusually shaped lot.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for the staff before I ask the applicant to come forward? Okay. With that, I'd ask the applicant to please come forward and please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Ray C., 795 Colonial Lane, Milton, Georgia.
I'm Susan Chu.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what your project is so that I understand we presented this last month, but this is a new month and this is a new recording and a new case as far as we're concerned.
Understood. We're just looking to expand the house. To the discussion, our current back boundary is really our side yard. It's literally where the driveway is. So we would look to come out, but, you know, there's still obviously in our mind, proper buffer between ours and, where we would come out in the boundary. There's naturally just some trees there today that we're not touching those, that remain. I know we have a letter from our neighbor next door who obviously is supporting this. That's on record.
Okay, and does staff have that
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
All right, that's good to note. And that would be the neighbor immediately adjacent to your side yard / rear yard as defined?
Correct.
Currently, okay.
Correct.
And you also have quite extensive site plans and elevation plans of the structure that you're looking to build.
Yes.
Staff, is there a way that we can get those pulled up so that there's video of this for those looking online? There you go. Just to zoom out some. Okay, so the shaded area would be the addition that you're looking at, and it also
Yes,
shows
correct.
on there the existing 50-foot setback, and then the proposed 25 if we would determine this to be a side yard. So the addition would be within that 25-foot, outside of the 25-foot side yard.
Correct.
Okay. And then, can we also show the elevations in terms of what the structure is intended to look like?
Front first.
You might want to flip it. It's upside down to us. Okay, so the addition is designed to match the existing house and look like it was contiguous to the original home.
Correct.
Is there any concerns with having a condition that to this specific site plan as well as the elevation plans? Is this your final product that
This
you're
is
looking?
our final product.
Okay. And I think there's a side view too. Okay. And is there a side view as well, I believe? Only for the neighbor's purpose. I think it's on A2.
The right side is.
Robin, can you rotate those 180 degrees? 180 degrees.
Right. Can you zoom just a little bit? So this would be the side view from the adjacent neighbor.
Correct. Although they wouldn't be able to see it because there's a bunch of trees.
Understood. Okay. Anything else you'd like to share regarding your application?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move to a public comment period where folks can speak in favor or against this application, and you'll have a chance to make a closing comment if you care. And we may have additional questions. So you can go ahead and have a seat real quick. So if there's anyone online that's interested in speaking or here in person, for those perhaps online, if you're on Zoom, click on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Your Hand if you're interested in speaking. If there's anyone here present, what we'll do is we'll have an equal amount of time for those interested in speaking in favor or against. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor or online who wishes to speak in favor? Robin?
I'm just making sure. I don't think that this wants to, but I'm just.
And we have one letter of support from the adjacent neighbor.
Don't have that, but they are saying that they do.
The applicant has. Yeah.
But if we could just summarize that into the record as support.
Thank you.
Property of the first that is most impacted.
Shuba, can you just read the name and their address as well as just a general synopsis of their position?
So this is a letter from Sherry Corello and Mark Richards, dated September 10, 2020. Address is 785 Colonial Lane, Milton, Georgia, 3004. We own and reside at the property of 785 Colonial Lane, next door to the homeowners at 795 Colonial Lane. We have been in communication with the owners. Ray and Susan Shu have viewed and discussed in detail their architectural plan for modification of their home. We do not believe issuing their request with variance on the setback will negatively impact our property, nor our home value. The tree buffer planted by the Shus years ago provide adequate privacy between our yards. This buffer will remain intact. Thank you.
Okay. And is there anyone else online interested?
Nobody's stated they wanted to speak. So.
Okay. And do we have anyone interested in speaking in opposition? Okay. Hearing and seeing no opposition. Mr. and Mrs. Shu, you have an opportunity to make a closing comment, or we have an opportunity to make any closing questions before we move to a motion. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Do you have any final comments?
No comment.
No comments from the applicant. With that, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve V20-24 795 Colonial Lane to allow the addition on a single-family dwelling to encroach into the rear yard setback with the condition of, we have 4 site plans here. First one for construction dated 11/14/2020. Second being the main level floor plan dated 09/09/2020. The exterior elevations 09/09/2020. And the exterior, an additional exterior elevation 09/09/2020.
I'll second that. Any discussion regarding the motion? I would make a point that we have 4 considerations. In summary, spirit and intent of the ordinance, extraordinary or exceptional situations pertaining to the piece of property, whether or not this would cause substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties, and that public safety, health, and welfare are secured. And I think this application has demonstrated it meets all four of those criteria. With that, if there's no further discussion on the motion, I'd ask for those in favor of approving V20-24 with the two primary conditions: site plan dated by the Builders Design Group dated 11/14/20, elevation plans A1, A2, and A3 dated 9/9/2020, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Your application is passed unanimous. Congratulations on your project, and please continue to work with staff on the next steps in terms of building permits. And thank you for your patience in coming back again this month.
Thank you for coming.
Next item on our agenda would be V20-25, 14102 Seabiscuit. Would staff please present it?
V2025 14102 Seabiscuit, Triple Crown Subdivision. The requested variance is to remove two conditions for a flow well and a pervious pavers from variance case V2013 that allowed pool deck and pool equipment within the 75-foot impervious setback with conditions. Section 2426(1)(2). Background. The site is a 1.29-acre lot located along the north side of Seabiscuit in Triple Crown subdivision. It is zoned Community Unit Plan, CUP, and is located in rural Milton overlay. The final plat for this that phase of Triple Crown was recorded in 2005, which only had 25-foot state buffer. In September 2020, pursuant to V2013, the applicant proposed to build a pool in 75-foot impervious setback, as shown in Exhibit A. Section 2426(1)(2) states that an undisturbed natural vegetative buffer shall be maintained for 50 feet measured horizontally on both banks as applicable of the stream as measured from the point of rested vegetation, and an additional 25-foot impervious setback is required adjacent to a stream. Pursuant to V2013, the pool was allowed by the BZA within 75-foot impervious setback with the following conditions. 1. Per site plan by Neptune Pools dated July 12, 2020. Place temporary construction fence barrier along the construction area no further than 10 feet into the 50-foot undisturbed buffer. This area shall be replanted. No pool structure, wall, foundation encroachment permitted into the 50-foot undisturbed buffer. Drainage plan required to include flow well to mitigate runoff. Pool deck surface to utilize pervious pavers. Applicant now wants to remove two conditions: 1, flow well, and 2, pervious pavers for the pool deck surface. On November 17th, the applicant presented the plan shown in Exhibit A. The case was deferred and the owner was told to present the details of the proposed alternative. The applicant has submitted a revised plan as shown in Exhibit B, and it has an alternative to the flow well and pervious pavers. The city's plan review engineer is in support of the proposed French drain. The staff notes that this revision does not encroach past the proposed pool in the 50-foot city buffer. Design Review Board met on November 3rd and had following comments. DRB supports the BZA's original conditions of approval pursuant to V2013 and does not support the applicant's request to remove the two conditions. Staff response. Part 1. Relief, if granted, would not offend the intent of ordinance since the applicant has worked with his engineer to produce a plan to minimize the impact. This solution is an acceptable substitute to the two conditions imposed by the BZA earlier to mitigate the impact of impervious coverage. The applicant's alternative has been reviewed and recommended by the city's plan review engineer. The intent of the ordinance is to limit the development in the buffer. Therefore, the variance could be granted. Part 2. Since the considerable portion of this property is taken by the required undisturbed buffer, there is some hardship that is not caused by the applicant. Not removing the conditions means further hardship since the applicant has gone above and beyond to meet the regulations and provide a viable engineering solution. Therefore, requested relief can be granted. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. The modified French drain would mitigate the runoff from the pool deck and new impervious surface. Part 4. The public safety, health and welfare would be secured and substantial justice is done by removing the two conditions previously requested for the construction of the pool and to allow the proposed alternative. Staff recommends approval of the variance request to remove the following two conditions pursuant to V 2013. 1. Drainage plan required to include flow well to mitigate runoff. 2. Pool deck surface to utilize pervious pavers.
Okay, are there any questions for staff? I would just ask staff to,
Put the plan.
yes, let's push the Exhibit B while the applicant comes forward. I would ask the applicant to please come forward. I think this illustrates best what you're trying to do and want the public to see this as well. If you please state your name and address for the record.
Brian Wolbrock, 14102 Cedars.
And thank you for your patience in coming back before us. And also, it looks like you've spent a considerable amount of time working with staff on some alternatives. So please share what you care for us to understand.
Also, we worked on an alternative solution to mitigate the water from the impervious pavers and the deck runoff in the pool. And rather than have the concerns that I had before with pervious pavers and the flow wells, we were able to put the modified French drain in to do the work of what those two other stipulations were. And as long as you approve it, that's the solution I'd like to go with.
Understood. So the footprint of the pool and the pool deck hasn't changed. The mitigation option for any runoff, because you're abutting a stream, is what
Correct.
changed. The purple line, as shown on this drawing, is the 50-foot buffer, which you're
Correct.
building up near there, as you were originally. Are there any questions for the applicant? Do you have anything further to add?
And
Before I move to public comment? You will have a closing opportunity if needed.
good if you're good.
Okay. If you have a seat, see if there's any public that's interested in commenting. Once again, if you're online and interested in commenting, As a Zoom caller, you can click the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. Of course, if there's anyone here present that wishes to speak in favor, I will start with in favor. Robin, do you have any interest online?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing and seeing no further interest in public comment for support of this application, is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition or online? Okay. Hearing and seeing no interest in public comment for or against, Mr. Wilbrock, you have an opportunity to make a closing comment. Do we have any closing questions for the applicant?
I guess I would just like to get some further clarification on the pervious pavers. Why would we take that out of the conditions variance?
Is that a question for staff or for the applicant?
I guess staff.
So based upon the resubmittal and review by the plan review engineer, the proposed alternative basically compensates for both the dry well and the pervious pavers, or with the grass between the pavers, because basically this mechanism will take any kind of pool water that comes over, as well as rain and drainage. It all deals with it in that modified French drain, so there's not a need to utilize grass pavers. So
Drainage in the deck in two different, I'm sorry.
Oh, I see.
We're putting drainage in two spots on the deck to pull all the water from the deck, as well as the overflow from the pool, and it's all incorporated into the piping that's then pushed over to the French drain. So it'll all have to go through that to get down into the creek.
It looks like there's 5 areas on the concrete.
Oh, for
Deck
drainage?
around the pool, is
Okay.
that correct?
Then he put in more drainage than he originally planned on.
So it's directed flow of drains to capture any water and then directs it to the French drain. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any final questions for the applicant? All right, you can have a seat. I'll make note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve petition number V2025-14102. Move 2 conditions for a flow well and pervious paver variance 2013 that allowed pool, deck, and pool equipment 75-foot impervious setback. And I would like to make,
Pull your microphone.
oh, sorry.
There you
I'd
go.
like to make that conditional on, let's see, the pool site plan. I see a date on,
It's at the very bottom.
November 24th, 2020.
No. She's probably looking at old. We have a new plan.
Got a newer one than that?
Should say new. There should be 2 plans, the old one and the new one.
Isn't this the new one?
This says new, and it's dated.
yeah, what we'd like to do is get
Okay,
220
rather than-
revised. So
Okay, so dated December 2nd, 2020,
Okay.
revised.
I second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second to approve this application, removing 2 prior conditions, one regarding a flow well, the second regarding pervious pavers, conditioned on this revised site plan. Again, I would comment, as staff has, that this application appears to meet all 4 of our conditions as well. The spirit and intent of the restrictions we initially imposed was to capture any rainwater that would be impacting the stream. And the solution does that. It also, as staff has noted regarding the unusual characteristics of this property, and there's no detriment to the public good or public safety, health, and welfare. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving V20-25 to remove the condition on the flow well, as well as the pervious pavers, per the site plan revised dated 12/2/20 by Neptune Pools, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passed unanimous. Good luck with your project, finally. And continue to work with staff. I think it's demonstrated a good working relationship as you work towards your permitting. The next item on our agenda is V20-660 Glendalough Court. Please present.
V2026 660 Glendalough Court requested variances to allow addition of an accessory structure to encroach into the side yard setback, section 64-416I. The site is a 1.745 acre lot on the west side of the Glendalough Court in the Enniskerry subdivision. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. The final plat for the property was approved in 1992. As per section 64-416C1, a 25-foot side setback is shown for the lot. On the north side of the subject is a piece of land that serves as the road frontage for the house that is located across the lake, which is not being utilized by that owner. The applicant wants to build an accessory structure on the property that would be used as a garage, as shown in Exhibit A. The existing driveway would be used to access the new two-car garage. However, the structure is encroaching into north side setback by 10 feet. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a variance. Design Review Board met on November 3rd, 2020 and had following comments. Recommends approving the variance, requesting that the applicant provide a support letter from the property owner that at 655 Glendalough Court. Provide a floor plan and elevation of proposed structure. Staff response. Part 1. Since there is an additional 20 feet wide stripe of land available between the two neighbors, the side yard encroachment, if allowed, would not offend the spirit of the ordinance. Because of the location of existing driveway, the shape of this property, and the lake to the rear creates an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situation, and would support the proposed location of accessory structure into the side yard setback. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good because there would be 35 feet between the structure and the adjacent house located on the cul-de-sac. Part 4. Public safety, health and safety is secure because the new structure would be at a safe distance from the existing house. Staff recommends approval of the variance requested for a single-story accessory structure.
I have a question for staff, and it's a clarification on the site plan. It looks like the closest point of encroachment into the side yard The narrowest point is at 14.8 feet, is that correct? And as the property line moves away in a diag, I don't see, maybe there's a better,
Yes, it is 14.8. That's
at
correct.
the closest
At the
corner.
closest point, yes. Corner, yes, which would be the portion of the building that would be closest to that property line is 14.8 at the corner.
Of what would normally be then a 25-foot setback, side yard. Okay. Are you going to display that? Okay. Hang on, it's focusing. There you go. Okay. And then adjacent to that is this 20-foot the strip of land for the flag. Okay.
Along its entire distance. It did, many times the flagpole will shrink down to at least 50 to 50.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying both those dimensions. And I think, as we did with prior, we'll probably want to show some of the elevations of this project as well. So I'd ask the applicant to please come forward, state your name and address for the record. And
Estes Barker, excuse me, 660 Glendalough Court.
And Jennifer Barker.
okay. What can you share about your project, what you're looking to do?
We're wanting to build a garage, and due to the pie-shaped nature of our lot and the severe slope going down to the lake, to situate it, we need the variance because of the strip of land that's between our two properties. If that strip of land was split evenly, or even 2/3 to our neighbor and 1/3 to us, we wouldn't need a variance, but it's there. The owner of the strip is here tonight in favor of our project.
We've tried to set it back as far as we can. We're already incurring quite a bit of additional expense because of the slope. So, and it's going to require that much more support structure.
Right, it looks like you've got a partial basement on the backside, half the garage, and that's because of the topography.
That is
You're going to
correct.
utilize that as storage?
Yeah, lawnmower, that kind of thing.
Kind of wish I had that. And there's quite a few elevations, which I think Robin's going to start showing here next. But before she does that, one question would be practicality of moving this detached garage closer to your primary residence. And it looks like there's an access of staircase back to your backyard, and you're looking to maintain that?
Yes.
Okay. And I think I recall,
It's
and
only about 5 feet between
It's
where
a sidewalk size.
Yeah.
okay, the dimension we see on that drawing is
Shows
9.
Yeah. Showing 9.
But regardless, that's an access and egress from your backyard, which serves as a safety issue as well for fire, EMS, etc. The clarification regarding the elevations, I think we can put those up. And thank you for having these provided for us. The building materials and the design match the existing house?
Correct.
There were some, I'd ask you to address the use of this addition. You mentioned it as a garage. There's no living space, no
living
heated space.
Garage.
Well, you're allowed to have heated space, just not allowed to have living in terms of accessory. It looks like you have a lift that's going in here, some sort of hobby.
Well, I do have a antique Jeep that I need to store.
Okay. Not a Mustang? That's what I see pictured here.
We have one of those.
We have one of those, but it's not at our house.
I'm a car guy, so.
66 convertible.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant regarding their project?
Can you clarify if the two structures are going to be connected by a breezeway, or are they completely separate?
Separate, no connection.
And it looks like you're repurposing part of your existing garage for personal expansion of the home? Okay.
Both of our mothers have dementia, so at some point, one of them, if not both, will be with us.
Okay. All right. Robin, do we have the letter of support, or is this your adjacent neighbor?
Neighbor can come up to speak. I don't
Are they planning on coming to speak? Okay, then that's fine. Well, I'll call public comment here in a minute. So you've seen the process. I'll ask for public comment. You'll have a chance to make a closing comment, and/or we may have final questions for you. So with that, you can have a seat for now. If there's anyone online that's wishing to comment in favor or against, we'll start with those in favor. Click the participants button at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. Do we have anyone online? I'd ask the adjacent neighbor to please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Eric Reel, 655 Glendalough Court. I am the adjacent property owner to what you described as the flag. And I've reviewed the plans with the markers. Aesthetically, they're nice. I have no objections to the project that they want to undertake.
Okay. Thank you for coming forward and supporting your neighbor. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor?
No, I don't think we have any other comment cards.
All right, then I'd move to an equal amount of time. If there's anyone here to speak in opposition. I will note that we did receive opposition correspondence from the neighbor at 660 Glendalough Court. And
That's 645.
sorry, 645. It was regarding 660. At 645 Glendalough Court did provide correspondence, which we all have in our packets, where they were against this this plan. And I have personally considered that as well. I'm sure the rest of the board has. Are there any final questions for the applicant? And is there any interest in making a closing comment from the applicant? None? Okay. With that, I'll make note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
You're supposed to click on it for against.
Oh, I did. Might put my hand up. Look.
Hold on one second. We may actually have some public comment.
the video.
Ms. Ann, do you want to speak?
So it sounds like we have someone who may be interested in speaking. If you click the icon labeled participants at the bottom of your screen and the button labeled raise hand. You do.
I did.
Okay, I think we can hear you. If you please state your name and address for the record.
Ann Koljian, 645 Glendalough Court. We are the adjacent neighbors to the strip of land. He lives across the lake. So where our house is, we are the ones that are going to be really affected by this new structure that's being built. It's a new structure of two-car garage, but they already have a two-car garage. And in looking at the neighborhood, their building that they're building looks like it would be fit in, but there's no other structures like that in the neighborhood. There's no other detached garages in our whole subdivision that look like that are detached. There's one existing garage, but it has a breezeway connecting. So I can't really say it's fitting into the neighborhood. Also, there's no trees or vegetation dividing the property because the strip of land is owned by someone across the lake. So we're just concerned about the damage that's going to happen to this strip of land, which has been a buffer between our two properties, and the style of the structure of the building.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there any other, so that was clearly public comment in opposition. Is there, that raises a question for me, so I'd ask the applicant to please come forward.
I'm going to close out and just make sure we've got all the opposition and...
Right.
Okay.
Robin, do you have any other
No, there's
public
not
comment?
anybody.
Okay. So in listening to their concerns around the visual impact of your proposed project, have you considered in discussion regarding a buffer, planting of a vegetation buffer?
So there were more trees. Their oak tree fell several years ago, knocked down 7 pine trees across our driveway, which is why the trees are limbed up in their complaint. Damage from those pine trees falling down across the driveway.
Hold on one second. Robin, we have a picture from the neighbor. Could we put that up?
Yeah, so let's see. I was just bringing up Google Earth right now, and I'm trying to figure out a way to share.
Well, while you do that, please continue with my inquiry regarding consideration of vegetation to provide some screening.
We could certainly plant vegetation. That's not, we've planted a few things already. We could plant more. That would not be an issue.
Especially if Eric doesn't oppose more
Right.
plantings.
Okay. I'm guessing that yours is the driveway with all the cars. And it looked like there was
Not
a...
as many anymore. My 2 oldest sons are moved, they're graduated now.
So this is their house right here.
Definitely an old picture because there were quite a few more trees before the storm.
The structure, yeah.
Right, so the oak tree on the corner of their house is no longer there, along with at least 7 or 8 pine trees.
Okay.
Can you point out where the new structure is going to be?
Right where those, in front of where those cars are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so you're not opposed to providing some sort of buffer screening and vegetation as a possible condition?
Not at all.
Okay. Are there any additional questions that were raised hearing the full public comment? Okay, thank you. So I'll make note that the public comment is closed, and I would open the floor for a motion and a second. I'm going to make a motion to approve V20-26 to allow the addition of an accessory structure to encroach in the side yard setback per the survey site plan. Hang on, I don't have the boundary from Boundary Zone Inc. dated 8/7/20, and per site plan and elevation plans by Trey Lucas Architecture dated 7/8/20, Plan 1.0, A-1, A-2, A-3. And the third condition would be to work with the city arborist to plant a vegetation buffer adjacent to the proposed addition. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
I think we've addressed some of the current concerns that we've heard today. The question that was presented.
Yeah, I would elaborate in that, as we have in all of our cases, the spirit and intent of the ordinance with the 35-foot strip of land that's adjacent, as well as a vegetation buffer. I think we're certainly cognizant of the maintaining a buffering for this project. There is certainly, with this being a pie-shaped lot, the front corner intrudes and then it fades away in terms of intrusion into the side yard. In terms of detriment to the public good and surrounding properties, as you said, Hodge, I believe that's being mitigated through the vegetation, as well as insisting that the structure is designed to match the existing home and that public safety, health, and welfare are also secured. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving V20-26 with the three conditions according to the site plan, survey, the site plans and elevations, as well as the city arborist requirement for a buffer, vegetation buffer, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion passed unanimous. Good luck with your project and continue to work with staff through the building permit process. Next item on our agenda is V20-2770 Cooper Sandy Cove.
And the applicant has asked to defer this case.
Right. So the applicant had asked via email to defer this item, and so they can have further time to have a new survey of the property done to see if they can resolve it in that fashion, or they need to continue on. So.
Okay. Hearing that, I would make a motion to accept their request for deferral to our next scheduled Board of Zoning meeting, which would be in 2021, January of 2021.
Second.
Certainly, if the applicant is at this application is at their bequest, and if they are needing to shore up their survey and perhaps mitigating the need for a variance altogether, I think it's wise for us to accept and allow them that time. All those in favor of deferral of V20-27, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. I hear an aye. So we are all in favor unanimously of deferring this application. The next item on our agenda is V20-28, 13230 Providence Road. Would staff please present?
V2028 13230 Providence Road. The requested variance is to allow the lot coverage for the AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from 20% to 25%. Section 641141D1B. Background. The site is a 1.016 acre lot located on the west side of the Providence Road. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. The minor plat for the property was approved in 2008. As per section 641141D1B, lot coverage for each individual lot zoned AG1 shall not exceed 20% for lots that front on public streets. The current impervious coverage on the lot is 19.26%. The applicant wants to build a pool and a deck in the rear yard that would increase the impervious coverage well beyond 20%. The applicant worked with the city staff to reduce the proposed footprint. It is still above the permissible limit, and so the applicant is requesting a variance. On November 3rd, DRB met and had following comments. Work with the city staff to reduce the impervious lot coverage. Staff response. Part 1. The home and the driveway is already covering 19% of the lot. The proposed design of a pool and a deck is elaborate and not considering the limits of this lot. It would offend the spirit and intent of the ordinance if the honest efforts are not made to limit the additional lot coverage. Part 2. After the DRB comments, the property owner worked with the city staff to reduce the footprint of the proposed addition. It is staff's opinion that a further reduction in the proposed pool, deck, and expansion is possible. There is no extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to this property. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would cause detriment to the surrounding properties because of the increased runoff. For the public good, the ordinance limited lot coverage to 20% for the properties facing the public road. Part 4. Public safety, health, and safety may be harmed because it could increase the runoff towards Providence Road. Staff recommends denial of the variance. If the BZA approves the variance, staff recommends following condition: use of pervious surface on the pool deck and or driveway, reduce the amount of pool deck and or driveway.
So, perhaps the applicant will know this as well, but is it an equal, started at 20% and we're now up to 25% in terms of encroachment?
So, is it a question for me?
It is.
So they have not given any final number to us.
Okay, so we'll clarify that. So this plat was approved in 2008. When did Milton adopt this restriction regarding the limitation on amount of
17.
2012, 2013,
2012?
after the plat was approved.
And so can staff elaborate on what what that restriction is and
Sure. In the rural Milton overlay, which this lot is obviously located within that area, for single-family residential lots, there's a requirement that they're not for lots that are adjacent to or fronting on public roads are required not to exceed 20% lot coverage. And that lot coverage would include driveways, decks, the actual house, obviously, a pool decking, all that is calculated into the lot coverage. It does indicate in our staff report that the current impervious coverage is at 19.26 prior to any installation of a pool. But maybe when the applicant comes up, they can give us the exact percentage that they're at. I do believe that they did shrink the area of the pool deck and are willing to utilize the impervious pavers. They can speak to that.
so if the pool deck were pervious pavers, that would not count against this calculation?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Other additional questions for staff before I ask the applicant to come forward?
Do we have any letters in support or against from the adjacent property owners?
There is some emails with the letters. It should be in your packet. Neighbors' consent have at 130 Providence Road and 13210 Providence Road. A text that comes in as well supporting it. Trust that set.
Okay, and perhaps we can get, if you could put the site plan up while the applicant shares what they're looking to do. I'd ask the applicant to come forward and share more just fine. Come forward and share more about your project. Please state your name and address for the record.
Matthew Titus, 13230 Providence Road. And this is my wife, Victoria Titus.
Okay.
So in terms of just the numbers and the percentages and things like that, because I know that's probably the most important part that we have to figure out. The current home occupies 19.2%. The initial proposal that we submitted to the city, that was before the panel that we here, 5.22. After we met with the city, we trimmed it down to 23.6. So that's the plan that you have in front of you. The revised plan is at 23.6. My understanding of the laws in Milton is that houses that front major roads like Providence were reduced from 25% to 20%.
It went the opposite way. So everybody was under the 20% rule when it was initially adopted. And then a year and a half or a year later, we amended the rules so any private roads were allowed to have 25%. So if you're on a private street or in...
Okay. So everybody got moved up except if you were abutting a major road.
Okay.
We purchased our house in December of 2017. It came with a plan that I believe, or was explained to me, predated this bump up. And so there's an equitable issue in terms of we bought the house understanding that there would be a pool and all of that stuff. That was approved by the city of Milton. Now that's just kind of the context. In terms of the actual arguments that we're making, I believe, respectfully reading through some of the city's arguments, that they're more conclusory and not specific to our specific piece of property and how that works. It just, because it's over 20%, it shouldn't be allowed. But I think if you look at the actual topography of the yard, it makes some sense why it doesn't cause a public detriment. And to the extent there could be runoff issues, one, all the property owners that there could be runoff to have consented, and two, that runoff would go to property that's unbuildable anyway. It's tree-lined property that's not buildable. So anyway, the topography of our backyard, and
it's not included, no.
And it's not included, correct. I believe someone went from the city of Milton to, I hope they did, because we had someone wandering around back there, to look at the backyard, and it's flat, and then it goes downhill towards the unbuildable areas that the property owners have consented to. So it doesn't break towards Providence Road, so to speak. Nothing in our plans is going to change that, so I don't think there's any detriment to the public good. And I think us reducing the footprint shows, that we get it, that we're trying to be good folks to everybody, and operate within good faith. So I don't think there's a threat to the public good because of the topography of our yard. Also, because we're talking about runoff and water, I think it's relevant to point out that no trees would be uprooted in our plan. There's nothing like that that's going to go on. In fact, as part of this plan, it's more likely than not that trees would be planted, and that there would be more beautification of a yard that's right now just kind of flat. So I think that also militates in favor of thinking the plan is a good idea. And then it's worth noting, because we're talking about 23.6%, and I think the cutoff is 20%, that we're talking about building a pool. And so at least, and I know Milton doesn't look at it this way, but at least some runoff could be accounted for with the mere fact that we are building a pool. My understanding is that some cities allow some sort of set-off, if there is a pool or something like that. So I just think that that's a relevant factor to evaluate. So that's the bottom line. I think we've tried to show some good faith. I think the way the yard sits doesn't pose a public risk, and I think we have consent. We do have consent of all of our neighbors, and yeah.
So a couple of questions come to my mind. One, you mentioned you bought the home in December of 2017. You had some plans that would have indicated that a pool was reasonably to put on this property. Do you have any documentation on that?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely provide documentation on that. I mean, that's what was provided to us when we bought the home. I don't think I've submitted any of that stuff, but
okay.
we certainly have that.
I'd be more curious, and because you went so far as to say that the city had already approved something, but
my memory is that it was a city-approved pool plan that, and to be honest, I don't know how much of this is puffery or how much of it is city-approved. I don't know if the builder said, hey, here's a great lot for a pool and here's a pool plan, or whether it was actually a city-approved pool plan. I believe it was a city-approved pool plan.
We can look it up. I can look it up right now.
okay. Staff's going to look that.
Sure,
that,
yeah.
that
He had
aspect
said
up.
he had ran electricity to it and all this stuff. But,
Okay. The second question I have is regarding this home is on septic. It looks like we don't have the drawing or the site plan up. It looks like your septic, currently, primary septic from Providence Road is off to the right of the home.
I didn't get your question. My wife was taking.
Your primary septic field is to the right of the home as you're looking from Providence Road. Do you happen to know where your reserve septic field is?
I do not.
So that's also something to be considerate of in a septic world. If there were to be a failure with your primary field, you'd move to a reserve field. If you built a pool in the reserve field, you wouldn't have that available to you.
I will tell you my understanding, and it's just my understanding, is that it flows into the back corner of the property, which is that downhill slope that we have as a picture. But that's just my understanding.
Well, I can see the topography, as you've noted it here, does drop to the back rear, but my question is a little more specific into understanding where the county, is it the Board of Health that manages that?
Yes, it's Fulton County
Public
yeah.
Health.
Public Health. So that's something to get an understanding of before you would place a pool, especially given that you're on a septic. And there's also one of the considerations in not overbuilding a particular piece of property. So those were my two questions. Are there any others?
Yeah, you had mentioned that after meeting with DRB, you were prior to meeting with DRB, you were at 25.22% for coverage, and you were able to reduce it to 23.6. Can you kind of highlight some of the revisions that you took on in order to make that possible?
Cut a foot off the entire plan, the perimeter of the plan.
The decking.
What's that?
The decking.
The decking, correct. Correct.
And the deck that you're presenting here, is it pervious or impervious?
It's actually, some people, our builder calls it pervious pavers because it's not cement. Based on on Milton City, our city standards, it is considered impervious because y'all consider impervious 4 inches, I believe. But in a lot of places, it's considered pervious because we're not permanently cementing. It's going to be water can go in between the buildings.
Can staff comment on that? Were you aware of that as part of the?
They have never submitted a proper drawings. They just have a conceptual drawings.
Okay, which is what was shown earlier.
It's travertine. It says travertine pavers.
Yeah, yeah, pavers. Yeah.
Would that change the calculations of pervious impact?
So basically,
Impervious
consulting with Bob, he's considering that if you have, let's say you have a 12 by 12 paver, no matter what it's, and then you have a 4-inch strip of grass, and then the next paver all along. I think we have some examples in one of the other cases.
Yeah.
And we would consider that as being contributing to being totally 100% pervious, in the sense that once it runs off the paver, then it goes onto the grass. It's not that, everything is contained within that area. So we're allowing it to be considered 100% pervious. So if, let's say, 100% of their deck was made out of that material and grass, then we wouldn't count that against as being impervious.
Can you come closer to the mic? So there's people listening online, and we record these.
Yeah. And when we talked with our pool builder, she said a lot of places consider what we're using, she considers pervious, and a lot of places do consider it pervious. 4 inches just creates a lot of mud and traction around the pool, and something that we're not necessarily wanting to do a whole deck of pervious pavers, but the way that we're cementing it, a lot of places give at least 50% of credit towards the pool build itself, the way that we're installing it. From our understanding, when we asked Milton, we were told it had to have at least 4 inches, which kind of creates a different topography and a different kind of mud.
Yeah, no, there is definitely different consideration there, and we run across these issues a lot. One alternative, which Robin, I think, was mentioning or referencing, would be putting grass in between some of your paving areas, which would then give you credit for that being an impervious surface, so that you have less of an issue with the monkey, whether it's monkey grass or other sorts of zoysia or whatever.
I mean, typically the examples have been just, a lush type of grass. Obviously, it takes some maintenance, but it works and it looks very nice.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Are there any follow-up questions?
I just had a comment to make. I mean, the house was it built in 2008?
No. So I have the permits, it was finalized out in 2015.
Okay, and you purchased it in 2017. And then the zoning ordinance, was that 20?
Okay, let me look that up right now.
It was either 2012 or 2013 is when City Council put the restriction on.
And I'm sorry,
impervious.
and I did not find any pool permits that were submitted. It's not untypical for a builder to kind of imprint or show a potential pool location, but it may not be approved by the city. It's just showing it's out of the septic area, it's out of the secondary septic area as well. So usually a builder is not going to go to the expense and time to get a pool permit just to have a pool permit when the person who's buying it may not even utilize that type of pool.
Right.
So.
But for staff has confirmed there was not a permit.
There was not a pool permit, no.
Okay.
But I will look up the dates of the...
And the ordinance change was we'll check into that date. It
And-
seems like it was prior to the build, though.
So, I mean, you did not purchase the home directly from the builder. Somebody else had lived there prior?
It's actually the builder that lived there.
Builder lived there, okay.
All right, any additional questions? So you've seen how this process works. We're going to get some public comment. We may have additional questions. You may have a closing comment that you may care to make as well before we move into a motion. So with that, just grab a seat. If there's anyone online wishing to speak from Zoom, click on the icon labeled participants at the bottom of your screen and then click the button labeled raise hand.
Or in the waiting room. Let me let them in. Okay, so I've let them in, and would anybody like to speak on this item?
At first, anyone wishing to speak in favor?
I think one's still connecting, so. Okay.
And while we're doing that, Shuba, or maybe let's make sure we have reference. Can you please read off the addresses that are in support that were provided in our packet? I have.
Oh, okay. We have one that's 13220 Providence Road and 13210 Providence Road and
The other one, 1800 Providence Farms Lane, the rear.
and there is no address on the text, so okay. Oh.
Okay. So those are adjacent property owners on either side, it looks like. Is there anyone in the room interested in speaking in favor? Is there anyone here present wishing to speak in favor?
I don't have anybody that's.
Is there anyone wishing to speak against this application here in person or online?
No.
Are there any additional questions for the applicant? I have one, if you'd please come forward. I have some concerns that you may not have looked into some of the details, and we have found consistently that when the homeowners work with staff, we find better options, better solutions, and less surprises. So I'm concerned when I ask questions regarding the reserve septic field, for example, that you need to be informed on that before we can make much of a decision, because that will catch up to you in the building or in the pool permitting process. So, and this decision or criteria, rather, what sort of paver options you might have to further minimize the amount of impervious is something that I think some time spent with staff could be very beneficial to all parties. You may still end up with some intrusion in terms of the encroachment of over the 20%, since you're already at 19.2, but the other consideration would be, so we typically see with pools, is runoff and mitigation. You heard a case earlier today regarding mitigation practices for pool and runoff, whether that's flow wells or French drains. I think more time spent with staff would probably make us all more comfortable and make yourself more comfortable. You're not getting into some surprises. So that.
So can I?
You certainly can.
Respond. I guess my question is, and I get that, the backup septic thing is kind of, we'll know, right? Like, that's not subjective. We'll know what that is. And we can present that information or write a letter. The subjective component is the degree to which there's going to be or not going to be a variance, obviously. And so is there a percentage when we meet with staff that we should aim for on this? You know, is there some precedent in Milton that says, you know, given this topography and all
No,
this?
so where staff will be, I think, most beneficial to you is to identify if there is going to be encroachment or intrusion into what mitigation might be helpful. So otherwise, you would need a variance, right? You're going to be above, but they will be able to say, okay, but to offset this, we're going to do this sort of paver, or to offset this, we're going to do this sort of drainage system to catch, you know, potential runoff. So those are the things that we don't like to solution in this board meeting, but is very appropriate to solution those with staff in terms of mitigation. So that's, I can't give you, we're not here to give percentages, but we do weigh heavily on what staff suggests regarding mitigation.
So, can I ask just a question? How are y'all giving any consideration to the I guess, is it about a third acre that lines our lot that is, that's unbuildable space?
Adjacent?
It is adjacent, and it basically lines our lot, and then the home lot is right out here.
So it's considered in the sense of what impact it has to surrounding properties, and we all have to make a determination on what we think the potential impact is. And if the surrounding property, as you heard in earlier cases, is an unbuilt strip of land or an unbuildable strip of land, then that's certainly something that is considered. But infringing on other people's property rights is not something that we look too kindly on.
Who owns the undevelopable, the property behind you that's not able to be developed?
Sign off, sweet couple. Everyone was like, we'll come to this meeting, I guess, if we want us to. They were like that. I mean, they have 2 acres that you can't even really, they don't use that land because they're.
I just think if you provided a more detail, being more specific in all of the things that you're talking about, but maybe isn't absolutely being shown here, it would make the board feel more comfortable in making a decision.
Like specifically how big that strip of, like we have a picture of the lot, like you're wanting to know kind of how that strip of land is and how that affects maybe calculations.
Well, it won't affect the calculation because it's not your land. But it will in the sense of consideration to one of the four considerations, just remember those, in terms of the impact of surrounding properties and whether, you know, what impact there could or could be. But in this case, in terms of the original ordinance is around impervious surface and a limitation regarding that. So mitigation on an impervious surface is trying to look for pervious alternatives or ways that you can capture runoff and so that it doesn't have a negative impact on your property or surrounding properties.
I think you need to show your secondary septic field,
right.
You know, what the pavers would be, what the spacing would be, what drainage you would have, kind of a soup to nuts state plan. And do you agree, Todd?
That's what I'm indicating. That's my perspective. We're going to certainly take a motion for the whole board. But being you are the homeowners, I know this is unusual to you because you don't do this every day. So I felt compelled to share some of where I think staff can be very helpful to you.
Thank you. Would you like me to share the tax map so you can see the lot shape adjacent to them? Or?
Do you think it'd be useful for all of us?
I have it up so I can show it.
That's fine. And while Robin does that, is there any additional comments or questions for the applicant?
I just think that there's more to this ordinance, you know. We don't know if that unbuildable land could be impacted by erosion. I mean, there's other things that could happen. To me, it doesn't matter where it is or what it looks like or, you know, and that it's unbuildable, but there's a reason for this percentage and taking care of the drainage problem. And that could affect even the unbuildable land and make it, you know, have other issues, other problems that we can't foresee. So I don't know if we want to even get into that side of things. I just think that our chairman here has given you some good direction to meet with staff and have them help you through this. You wouldn't need a variance otherwise.
So orientating us then.
So this is Providence Road, and
The narrow portion of that, yes.
All four of those homeowners. Not considered buildable at all.
Okay.
I think it's also worth noting that on the site plan here, the septic is shown.
Right, the primary, but not the reserve. So if that were to fail, then they need to go to reserve, and if they've built a pool in their reserve, they would have a problem.
Is that just public, not like, I've never heard of that. Do I just pull that from?
Your pool contractor should be aware that there's a secondary, and this is such a recent built property that it should have access to that.
Okay.
Septic
And
plan.
the health department, their records but at least you have the benefit of it not being a very old build, so.
If it's a public document, it's fine.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Do you have any closing comments? If you can have a seat then. So I'll make note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to deny petition number V2028, 13230 Providence Road, to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from 20% to 25%.
Is there a second? Hearing no second on that, I'll open the floor again for a motion and a second. I'd make a motion to defer until the next scheduled Board of Zoning meeting in January of 2021 to allow time for the applicant to pursue some additional mitigation as well as additional details with staff for the items that we've expounded on in tonight's meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I just think it's courteous to the applicant. This is their home, their application, and the first time that they're doing a pool. And I would hope that they would take the guidance to work with staff who's very capable of helping with a number of their issues. I'm not saying it leads to approval, but there's some outstanding questions that need to be addressed before we could even consider an approval.
I'd like to add that the site plan was somewhat incomplete and that we didn't really know where the secondary septic was at. So it was tough for us to really even consider it. I think it's adequate to give them additional time to go through that process. The applicant also demonstrated that they worked with DRB and worked with the city staff to kind of reduce from that 25 to something that was less. So they're showing that they're willing to work to get us to a number that's, I guess, more reasonable. And I think we need to give them another opportunity to come before with a more complete package.
Yeah, and in addition to that, they did seek out all of their neighbors, and so that is always a good thing, you know, with this board. So, great.
Okay, so all those in favor of deferring V20-28 to our January 2021 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion to defer passed unanimous. Okay, so we are now at a point where we have a scheduled minute break. Make a motion to reduce that 15 minutes to 5 minutes. I'm making a motion to amend the agenda down for this break to 5 minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are now in a 5-minute recess. Note that the recording is active throughout our break.
Hello.
Okay, we're back on. So we're back in session for the December 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals, and we're picking up on our agenda with petition number V20-31, 15590 Birmingham Highway. Would staff please present?
V2031, 15590 Birmingham Highway. The requested variance is to allow an existing guest house to be located in the front yard, Section 64, 1598B5. The site is a 10.50 acre lot located on the west of Birmingham Highway. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. Exhibit A and B shows the subject property and the location of structures. Exhibit C shows the subject property with respect to the location of other properties owned by the same applicant. For Section 64, 1598B5, the guest house can be located in the rear yard only. A single-family house of 1495 square feet existed on this property that was built in 1952. In addition, there are other accessory structures related to agriculture, including barns. The existing house is not in the front yard setback, and according to the applicant, the property cannot be subdivided because it is under a conservative use valuation assessment, CUVA, by the Fulton County Tax Assessor. The applicant has a primary residence under construction on this property. To receive a new permit, the property owner is required to bring the existing structure into compliance. The applicant wants to use the existing house as a guest house, and it is out of compliance to use as a guest house. Therefore, the applicant is requesting to allow the guest house to stay in the front yard to use as a guest house. The staff notes that existing house is in compliance with the requirement that guest house cannot exceed 1500 square feet of heated floor area. Design Review Board met on December 1st and had following comments. Recommends approval. Staff response, Part 1. The house was built in 1952 and is part of Milton's viewshed and rural character. Therefore, it would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance to allow it to remain. Part 2. According to the applicant, the property is under CUVA and not eligible for subdividing immediately. Because of the pandemic, there is a need for the family member to reside on the property, and because of these extraordinary situations not caused by the applicant, the literal application of the ordinance could create an unnecessary hardship. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause a detriment to the surrounding properties. Public safety, health, and welfare are secure by making use of existing house that has been part of the community since 1952. Staff recommends approval of the variance.
Before I have the applicant come forward, we've had a number of guest house requests. Can staff please read the limitations or the ordinance specific to a guest house in terms of its use, not being as a rental, for example?
Sure. Okay, these are the requirements. Required districts, which includes AG1. And then standards, no more than one guest house structure per lot may be used for occupancy by relatives, guests, or employees that work on the property without payment for rent. 2, a separate kitchen facility shall be allowed. 3, heated floor area shall be a minimum of 650 square feet and a maximum of 1,500 square feet. Number 4, principal building setbacks shall apply. And 5, the location shall be limited to the rear yard.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for the public. Are there any questions for staff before we ask the applicant to come forward? Okay. Would the applicant? Yes, Kim, Ms. Keller.
I drove by today. It's not really, it's the original house.
Correct.
They want to rename it a guest house, correct?
Right, it was the original house primary structure for that lot, yes.
And did that original house always have all that property, or no? They added that property?
I would have to have you ask that of the
'Cause
applicant.
it seemed like, in reading it, that they acquired 93 acres.
Yeah, that's something to confirm with the applicant. I had that question as well.
Okay.
Would the applicant or their representative please come forward?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I am Scott Reese with Bromwell Reese & Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia 30004. I'm here tonight representing the Gianturco family in their application for a variance to allow a guest house to be, I'm not going to say be placed, to continue to exist in front of the primary residence, so it would not be in the rear yard. As staff so aptly read the ordinance on guest houses, you'll see that we meet all of the other standards that they're set up for guest houses. This particular case, we've got a residence that was constructed in 1952, relatively close to the road. The Gianturco family has assembled approximately 92 acres of contiguous property, except for divided by the road, in this area. This particular piece was a 10.25, 2.3 acre parcel that was one of the last assemblages or parts that came into the assemblage. The properties are owned in family trusts and are in CUVAs to allow, the ability to own 90 acres in Milton and survive the tax liabilities and the fact that just trying to be able to own that large of a piece of property. So that makes it very, very difficult to subdivide without causing pretty significant tax ramifications. And it is in the conservation use valuation assessment, that parcel is. And if we're denied, we would have to go back through that process, which is very onerous and a tough deal. So this parcel, if I could get the site plan up on the screen. That would be the variance PDF. 2000. Okay, well, this one's fine. So the area outlined in blue is the Gianturco family properties. And on the, with north being up the page, the blue section, the northernmost part of that section, is that clear?
Yes.
The western part is the 10-acre parcel of the total of the 40 acres on that side of the road that they own. So the existing structure was there since 1952. Mr. Gianturco is constructing a new residence. There is a kind of a blue, or there's something there in the middle. That's where the new residence is going. So that gives you an overall view of what we're going through. If possible, if you could open the site plan. I'm sure it's going to be 2005 VAR PDF.
Oh, he was on.
I'm sorry, come down. Two more. Right there. Thank you. Okay. So this is the parcel the 10.23 or 2.3 or 10.3. And you'll see on the eastern side the existing residence, and it meets the standard setbacks of the 60-foot front, 25 sides, 50-foot rear. And then the new residence that will be the primary residence is under construction, and that's the location of where it's at. With the existing condition of the existing residence there was no way to construct a new residence in front of it. So that's the hardship is how do we save this structure and meet the guidelines, and it's impossible. And we can't just lift it up and move it without going to very extraneous measures. So 2020 with COVID, Mr. Gianturco's daughter, who was residing in England the start of the 2020 year, has had to move back to the U.S., and she will now move into this house when he moves into the back house. So we've got pre-existing conditions. I think we meet all of the criteria for the tenets of the hardships, all four. I've listed them out. Staff has read them. I can, if any questions, I can go through. I don't know that there's anything else. You have the pictures. I can put those on the screen if you think it would help anyone to see what's going on. Otherwise, I'm just going to try to answer any questions you have. If you would, I'll just wait and you can repeat your question and I'll try to answer that. So,
are there any questions for the applicant?
About the additional existing 1,200 and...
It's just an accessory structure. It's at one time it was a house or it was but its use as a residence has been out. It's probably 70 years, so it's just storage now. And the family that they purchased from kind of asked that if they could not tear it down for a while, or they would prefer that it stay because it was their great-grandfather's house.
So, Mr. Reese, can you state the approximate year that was built or age of that structure?
The best...
I'm looking at the tax, but it doesn't say.
Suppose it was around 1900. The Pilcher granddaughter, it was her that the Gianturco's purchased. It was J.T. Albertson. And around 1900 is that's folklore. Okay. So.
You need to include that in this?
So let me explain. So that's why I asked him to clarify the date of existence. So the Fulton County zoning ordinance was originally started in 1948, 1949, and then recodified in 1955. So this building was built prior to any zoning in the county. And so Mr. Reese and I had discussions about this structure even at the time when they came in for permitting for the new residence. And based upon the age of the structure when it was built prior to zoning and the significance that it has with the community. Because it was pre-zoning, it is, staff's opinion, grandfathered in, non-conforming, so.
And its primary use is not resident. It is not residential use. So it qualifies as an accessory structure, correct? And it's grandfathered in on anything else. Is that
correct?
I've had other barn.
Right.
I don't know which one you're speaking of.
But in this
I don't know
case,
when it was built.
it's predating any ordinances this is historical in that regard, I guess. It's predating any ordinance. I don't know that we've ever had this situation arise. And in staff's opinion, because the structure predates any ordinances, it is grandfathered. and therefore does not need a variance to be conforming.
Correct.
Okay.
And there was a question about acreage and,
I didn't realize that the other acreage was across the street.
okay. The total of the 90 is,
So that's just 10 acres.
well, there's approximately 40 acres on the western side of Birmingham Highway. This portion, the 10 acres, there's kind of an offset in the rear line, and that differentiates this 10.3 from the 30-acre, the old Rainfield horse farm that they
The
purchased.
blue line on the west side of Birmingham Highway is 40 acres.
Yes, ma'am.
And why are you differentiating the 10 acres?
Well, they were purchased at different times, and they are, from Milton's standpoint, they are individual lot or parcels. Let me
Okay.
Right, parcels.
semantics. So they are parcels that have never. So there has never been a combination plat to put in, because there's also structures on the horse farm to the south, and the way it was purchased in the different LLCs and trusts that it's held. It's all about taxes and estate planning. I don't have all of those problems.
Well, there's someone living in the guest house now.
Yes, Mr. Gianturco is residing in it until the construction of the house in the back, and then
The new main dwelling.
the new main dwelling, and he will move back there with his son, and one of the daughters is moving in the house, the guest house that I'm asking for the variance on.
And just to clarify, if I can interject, that in our ordinance, we allow an existing structure to be lived in while another structure is being built. So let's say if he wasn't going to pursue this guest house avenue, we would require him to demo this house within a certain amount of time of the certificate of occupancy of the new house. So it's totally legal for him to be living in the house while he's constructing the other house.
It happens quite often.
Okay. Any additional questions before I move to public comment? All right. With that, I'm be moving to public comment and see if there's anyone here physically or online wishing to speak in favor of this application. If you are online, wish to speak, click the icon labeled participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled raise hand.
We do not.
Okay. Do we have anyone here physically interested in speaking in opposition to this case? I will note for the record, we did receive an email correspondence from the 3 property owners that are adjacent to this subject parcel. Residences at 15620, 15626, and 15630 Birmingham Highway, expressing concerns about this request, having a smaller house in the front, which goes against the ordinance, which is why we're here for a variance request. There was concerns regarding the aesthetics, the density in this with this parcel, and ambiance of the neighborhood, which is primarily, in their case, single-family homes on large lots. And then the last concern was around renters moving in, which we have addressed. The city's ordinance on guest houses already prohibits renters in guest homes. I think that's a fairly fair synopsis of their opposition. Is there any other public comment before I?
There is not.
All right. Are there additional questions for the applicant? The applicant care to make any closing comments?
Just to address some of the neighbors' concerns.
Sure.
As far as density, this is in Ag Zone Rural Milton, which the allowable density is 1 house per acre. This would be 2 structures on 10.5, or if you expanded it on the entire 40-acre parcel across the street, or on that side of the street. So I think density concerns are somewhat maybe misplaced, that if we do not allow these large estates to have some leeway, then, you know, as you're all aware, the development pressure in Milton is such that there are plenty of developers looking to put one house per 1 acre on there. And I think that finding a way to allow these large estates to exist, and most of them are going to be owned by people my age or older. In a lot of cases, they're going to need caretaker cottages on those. And I hope City Council will address in the future that, you know, if whatever the magic number is, 10 acres, 20 acres, whatever it is, that that see a little foresight in the preservation of these estates, because I think that's what distinguishes the city of Milton from Alpharetta, Johns Creek, and Roswell, are our estate farm lots, and the preservation of those is very, very important to me, I guess because I grew up on a farm here more so than some other people. So thank you for your concerns, and thanks.
So with that final comment, I'll note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve V 2031 to allow an existing guest house to be located in the front yard, and in accordance with Brumbelow, Reese and Associates site plan that is dated 10/25/2020.
I have the date on that as 10/26/2020.
Let me restate that. The site plan is from Brumbelow, Reese and Associates, and it's dated 10/26/2020.
Okay. I'll second that motion. Any discussion?
I'd like to add a few points. One, we're maintaining that existing structure without interfering with the rural view shed, which I think is important. This is a pretty large tract of land at over 10 acres. And I think it further will enhance having that property, the new structure, pretty far off the road.
I'd also emphasize the variance considerations, the spirit and intent of our ordinance around guest homes on a large tract of land such as this. We've seen numerous accounts where an existing house is dated back to the 1950s in this case, and a newer house further off the road, as you described, allows Milton to maintain these large lots, as does the CUVA incentives. Certainly, the CUVA presents some other considerations in terms of the property itself and the detriment to the public good in surrounding properties is negligible in the sense that we're maintaining these large tracts in the rural viewshed, as you noted, and public safety, health, and welfare are secured. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving V20-31 per the site plan by Brumbelow and Reese dated 10/26/20, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passed unanimous. Next item on our agenda is V20-32, 214 Fossil Trace. Would staff please present?
V2032, 214 Fossil Trace, to allow a pool, pool deck, and pool equipment to be located in the front yard. Section 64-1609B1. The site is a 1.18 acre lot located on the north of Fossil Trace, a private access easement. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. The property is a flag lot that was created by minor plat Silverstone Estate in 2005. Per section 64-1609B1, a pool can only be located in a side or rear yard. This property is accessed from the private drive easement via Hopewell Road. When it was platted, the front yard setback for the property was determined based on section 6477(3). It states that when determining front building setback, measurement from front yard shall begin at the point of intersection of the stem and the flag portion of the flag lot running along the property line that is the most perpendicular to the stem. The applicant is proposing a pool in the back of the house based on the orientation of the house shown in Exhibit A. However, because it is the front yard of the flag lot, the variance is requested. The staff notes that the pool deck, and equipment require a minimum 10 feet setback from the property line. On December 1st, the DRB met and had following comments. Recommends approval, recommends getting support letters from the neighbors. The staff response. Part 1. Relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, since the house does not front Hopewell Road and pool would be physically in the rear of the house, which is the intent of the ordinance. Part 2. Because of the existing or orientation of the house, the location of the driveway and the garage in the rear yard, the rear yard is the property owner's side yard. The proposed location of the pool, although technically in the front yard, in practical terms, it is the rear yard of this property. The pool will not be directly fronting Hopewell Road. Therefore, the strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship. Therefore, the variance could be granted. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause a detriment to the surrounding properties because the pool would be in the back of the house, which is consistent with other developments in the Milton. The pool is located at the same distance from the property lines as if it is located in the rear as defined by the zoning regulations. Part 4. Public safety, health and welfare are secure since the pool would be built on the suitable and logical location on the site. Staff recommends approval of the variance.
Are there any questions for staff?
Maybe I'm being thick here. When I'm looking at this, where's Hopewell Road? Is it perpendicular to Fossil Trace?
Sorry?
Where's
I
Hopewell?
couldn't hear you very well. What?
I'm sorry. Is Hopewell Road perpendicular to Fossil Trace when I'm looking at the
So it's perpendicular, yeah, it runs perpendicular off
like
of
it says
Hopewell.
match line? That would be Hopewell Road.
Further down, yes.
Yeah. So if you look at the page
See
2,
it? Hopewell Road. Okay.
so if you look at page 2, you can kind of get an orientation of how the flag lot lays to Hopewell Road.
Another good visual is on page 5 of 6 in their letter of appeal.
Yes, I was looking at that.
So there looks to be the second house in.
Yeah, and actually I'll,
2 of 6 is a good view too, yeah. Does that help, Ms. Keller?
probably.
Is Fossil Trace, is that a private drive?
It's a private, and I'm very surprised they gave them their own street name. Not even a private street, it's a access way with flagpoles.
Mm-hmm. Right, I was, has the other people's house in it.
Right.
So just as a matter of procedure, why don't they reorient these houses and make the private access road, that being their front yard?
As we don't dictate where their front,
Robin.
we don't dictate how they orient their house, so it just works out a lot of times where's the good soils, where's the topo, and how they want to orient it. So, again, that's why there's a double-edged sword with a flag lot. There can be a lot of good characteristics about a flag lot, but then also when you come to build accessory structures, they may end up in the wrong place. I think we had that on New Providence just at the last meeting with the pickleball building, so it's not untypical.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay, if the applicant would please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rick Kaldrovics. I'm the owner of Outside Landscape, located at 11435 North Fulton Industrial Boulevard in Alpharetta. We are the designer of the pool project, and we'll be building it for the owner, Mr. Michael Jones. And I think it's, as explained, it's sort of a odd situation with a private road and an enclave of 3 houses that we find ourselves in a situation where the best location for the pool is in sort of this side back corner of the property, and makes all the sense to design and place it there with the current setup of the property and the way the homeowner uses the landscape. They have an adjacent sort of a fireplace patio setup. That's a covered structure right there, so it makes all the sense to design and locate the pool there. And with that, it's oddly, due to this situation with this enclave of houses and the private road, I guess technically is the front yard if you're facing Hopewell. Now, Hopewell, you can't even see from this property. It's through the woods quite a bit. So we're hoping that the application for this variance would be approved based on the practical nature of the site.
Okay. There's a lot of information on this site plan, including where the existing septic is, as well as noting an external tank and gravel trench for secondary septic. Can you explain? Is that for the basement level?
I think that's that's most likely the reserve area. The environmental department did come out and observe where the septic tanks were located, and it was all platted. And they observed that just to make sure it wasn't an issue with moving to the next step of permitting, for the pool in that location. And my understanding is we're in fine shape with that.
Okay. Okay. Are there additional questions for the applicant?
Are you subbing the pool to Neptune then?
Yes. The shell the shell part. We're doing the surrounding decks and landscape.
And what about the neighbor that they're next to that already has?
So I know Mr. Jones met with the Spraggles next door at 204 Fossil Trace, who have the pool adjacent to them. They explained the plan and reviewed it in detail. I think as any homeowner next door to a new construction project was concerned about drainage. The lot, the way it currently drains, there is a common riverbed that runs in the Jones property that runs through the through the Spraggles yard. They just wanted to make sure that stayed intact, and that is included in the plan to stay intact.
And we may hear from a neighbor online, I'm not sure. We don't have, do we have any written correspondence from any neighbors?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. With that, you've seen the process here. If you could take a seat, we'll see if there's any public comment. We may have final questions, and you'll have a chance to make a closing comment if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
If you're online and interested in commenting, raise your hand by clicking on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. Do we have any?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone here physically looking to speak in favor? Anyone here physically looking to speak in opposition? Do we have any follow-up questions for the applicant or staff?
I was just wondering about this access trail or road, what that will be. Is it gravel or
If
what the purpose of that is?
the applicant's representative would come forward and
I think what you're referencing to is from Fossil Road leading back to the pool, is that correct? So that's the construction access that, yeah, and when we're looking at that, we have all the trees plotted out on in that yard area, so we're trying to avoid any damage to any of the trees and the root structure, so that's why it's kind of a trail.
Okay.
So,
it looks like 3 trees in total are being removed, all of them pines.
yes,
From the plan. But that is the trail for construction access.
correct.
Any additional questions, Brenda?
I don't have any.
Okay. You have a chance to make a closing comment if you care, or else we'll move to a motion.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay? I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve petition V 2032-214 Fossil Trace to allow a pool deck, and pool equipment to be located in the front yard. Commensurate with Neptune Pool's site plan dated October 30th, 2020.
I'll second that. Any discussion? I think staff did a very nice job in commenting what I believe is my position as well regarding the impact and consideration, our 4 variance considerations. So I'd let that stand for the record. Their staff response regarding our four considerations, I think, is well drafted. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor of approving V20-32 with a condition of Neptune Pool site plan dated 10/30/2020, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. The motion for this petition passed unanimous. The next item on our agenda is actually a consideration of appeals and secondary variance, which is a little bit different process. And I would ask staff to please outline the procedures that we will follow in this appeal.
You want me to take that?
Or actually, that'd be great if the attorney would do that.
Yeah.
Since staff will be presenting.
For this secondary variance application, the procedures are outlined in the bylaws in Section 8 of Article 5. Basically, the setup will be that the city staff will present make a presentation of the case in chief, what the application or what the decision under appeal is. They'll have 15 minutes to present that. After the city has presented its case in chief, the appellant, the applicant in this case, will have their 15 minutes to present their evidence as to why the decision should be reversed. The city will have a 5-minute rebuttal period as to any issues that were raised by the applicant appellant. At that time, the board may question the applicant or the city. They also may address questions at any time during the presentations. After that period of 15 minutes, and 5 minutes, doesn't have to be used all, obviously. Each side will get a 5-minute closing statement, and then the matter will revert to the board for consideration.
And our considerations include what as options?
The options that you have would be to affirm the decision that the city made, to reverse the decision in total, or to reverse with basically instructions or conditions. Essentially, you could establish an appropriate instruction to the department director to apply after the board's decision.
Okay, and I will probably come back to you on that at the conclusion of the presentations. Okay, so in this case, I would ask that staff present V20-33.
V2033, 15255 Birmingham Highway. Requested variance is to appeal the rejection of the Community Development Director's decision denying the acceptance of building permit. Section 64, 2426 3A. Background. The site is a 2.81 acre lot located on the east side of Birmingham Highway. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. A barn currently exists on this property. The applicant removed the existing house without obtaining a demolition permit, nor reviewed by a design review board. By not obtaining the proper permission, the applicant cannot perform any type of development on this property for 5 years per section 64, 2426 3A. The applicant submitted a building permit for a new single-family house, but the Community Development Director rejected the building permit application. Section 64, 2426 3A states, if a property is demolished or relocated without a certificate of appropriateness from the DRB, Design Review Board, or in the event the plans are changed for the property from which the resource was removed without approval of the changed plan by DRB, then the following restrictions, in addition to any other penalties or remedies set forth in this article, shall be applicable to the site where the structure or the property was formerly located. No building or other permits will be issued for the construction on the site, with the exception of a permit to restore such structure or property after obtaining a certificate of appropriateness for a period of 5 years after the date of such demolition or removal. The owner attempted to submit the DRB application in March, but unable due to COVID-19. They removed house before the DRB could hear their case. The owner was required to remove the house from the property by their insurance company, citing the hazardous conditions. The applicant followed the correct procedure for removing the other structure on this property. The DRB approved the demolition of the barn in December 2020 meeting. The applicant is requesting to appeal the rejection of the Community Development Director's decision denying the acceptance of building permit, thus allowing the property owner the ability to develop their property without waiting the 5-year period. On December 1st, 2020, DRB met and had following comments. Recommend approval. Staff has no response.
Okay.
You did receive via email the rejection letter as well as the application, building permit application that was submitted in November, as well as the director's letter of rejection.
Correct. We have that in hard copy as well. The permit application, the director's original denial of the building permit. We also have site pictures of the prior structure, and we have a site plan for the new proposed home, as well as various elevations for the proposed new home. Is that it from the city's presentation?
It is.
Okay, then we'll move into the next step, which would be for the applicant to come forward. Please share your name and address. And as noted, you have up to 15 minutes to make your case as well.
Thank you. My name is Austin Lineberry. I am the owner of New River Building Company. My address is 1355 Freeholm Road, Canton, Georgia, 30115. I am the property owner's representative. I've recently become involved in this project as a desire to build the structure. I'm a builder in Milton, Alpharetta, surrounding areas. We do custom home projects. And these folks happen to be friends of ours as well and lived in the city for some time. Just to give a little bit more background on the property, so they live currently in the home next door. They've lived there for several years. The property next to them, Mr. Plummer had been in contact with his family constantly about potentially wanting to make his property larger and acquire this property. You should see in your pictures there, and I've got additional photographs if you need to see them, but this house was in pretty rough shape. Given that we were friends back before he considered buying it, I walked through the house, and we literally were missing holes in the floor. Like the floors were falling in, there were holes in the wall. The deck was falling off. There was caution tape, so it was in bad shape. I mean, there was pine trees growing out of the pool. There's a above ground plastic pool. The whole property had been neglected, honestly, and it was in rough shape. So luckily for them, the property became available. They purchased the property in March during the throes of COVID, right? So at that time, Mr. Plummer initiated State Farm Bank to underwrite that property in addition to his property next door. So they initiated the policy, but then they sent a representative out to walk the property and basically rejected his request to insure the property. And in conjunction with that, tied the termination of his policy together. So basically, you own this whole property now, so your policy is in jeopardy as well as not being able to continue underwriting this property. So all of this started in March and progressed all the way to May. So I have a letter with me as well from the insurance company.
Can you put that on the display?
Yeah, absolutely. So the letter will be dated April the 20th, and you'll see the requirement to demolish or the requirement to remove the structure and the cancellation of the policy date right here. as being May 25th, 2020. Yeah, so I've circled in the left corner April 20th, 2020. Let me just show you for record that that is from State Farm Bank. You'll see in the middle the reference to the property, 15255 Birmingham Highway, which is the property that has been acquired. Their home is 15245 next door. And then there, underlined at the top, is that May 25th cancellation date. You'll see in the body of the letter, it goes into the condition of the property and safety and wellness, and that they can't continue insuring the property. Again, I became involved professionally after that point. I had seen the property before he had bought it, but he had worked with a contractor and attempted to contact the city, looked through online. The city was shut down, and basically ended up out of fear of getting his policy removed and having other problems with insurance companies to remove the structure. I would say that it was a significant safety risk to the city, to surrounding citizens, to children who might wander. So I think that's why he decided to take it down. He has 3 small children, and there's other kids that live around the community. That is the overview of basically where we stand in this case, that there was no ill intent, no neglect. They were not trying to do anything under the table. It seriously was a situation where they didn't know what to do. So he had the structure removed. And then now they did leave they're calling it a barn, but it's really a garage, which the DRB approved last month to remove. It's got 4 garage doors, and that thing was in rough shape too. So he had wanted to maybe rehab that, but in planning for the whole property, had decided to go ahead and remove that and build a new house. So the building permit we applied for is on 15255, and that's for what we are calling a house. It does have 1 bedroom and a small kitchenette. The ultimate vision is to build a larger estate home on a combination plat. So he wants to take the 2-acre plus property, his current property, combine and make a bigger parcel, build a larger custom home for his family there, and then have the house that we're applying for the building permit for, that will become almost like a guest home with a garage. So it's essentially a garage with a house above it. So it does qualify for all of the things that a house is required for Milton. I've checked with Bob on that in the city, and worked with Cody on that before he left. But so all those requirements are met. So again, the big vision here, I know that we're at step 2, but the big vision is to go to step 5, and that would be to get the approval to combine the property into a larger parcel, which I know the city likes, and to build these nicer structures. So eventually everything would come down, including the home that they live in. It's an older home. There's nothing historic about it. It's a smaller home that needs to come down as well. It is habitable, but it does have a long lifespan left. That's basically the case where we're at for their situation. There's COVID and the pandemic. They had the hardship. They have the insurance company involved. And so that's why we are very respectfully asking for you guys to reverse the decision to deny the permit, allow this family to move forward with planning their single-family home. They're not going to develop this into lots. They want to combine the property into a larger parcel, make it more private, and build a home in the very near future. So first, the smaller structure. Next will be the larger structure.
You're fine with time. You mentioned that the city was shut down back in the March, April timeframe when all this came about with the insurance company. I don't believe the city actually was shut down. We did suspend meetings, DRB, Board of Zoning meetings. Is there any correspondence you might have from the applicant to the city on this matter?
I would have to specifically ask the owner. He was the one that was handling that. I was not involved at that period of time. I know after hearing his, the situation that he explained to me, that he was aware that the meetings were not happening, and he did say that he tried to contact, or I don't know the context of that. I shouldn't tell you something that I don't know specifically.
That's fine.
But I do know that that was what he has told me.
Okay.
I have a question.
Ma'am.
When was the house demolished?
The house was demolished specifically, it was right in May, I believe. Do you want I can get you the exact date, but it was demolished before the May deadline. Let me look at the exact date for you. Yeah, the timeline was purchased in March. It could have been the very end of April or beginning of May. Let me look at the letter that we submitted to the DRB. I think that had it in there. Robin, do you have a record of that as well?
Not with me, no.
I think it's probably sufficient to understand
that's
that it was
fine.
late April, early May when it was
Yeah, it was in that
demolished.
time period. I mean, I could pull the exact date
So-
if that's necessary, but it was
So-
before the deadline.
So these lots are not combined, but the insurance company was seen as combined?
Well, it's the same owner, right? So his house, I think it would be appropriate maybe to show you an overview of the property. That might give it better context. If I may.
I just don't know why they wouldn't.
Can we put the projector up? There you go.
I have this on paper as well that I could show you.
Yeah, even from this, we can see the trees in the pool.
Like a large planner.
We're okay. We can see it.
Adjust the head.
There you-
You twist the knob to.
We're good. I think the autofocus turned off on the projector. There you go.
So this is their current residence off of Apple Maps, and that is the garage structure in the back of the property that we got. So,
And that's generally the location you're looking at building this new structure, new home.
yeah, I can show you on a site plan.
We have the site plan, but with this visual, it's generally near
The new-
that
yeah,
barn.
Yeah, the new house sits on top of the old barn, essentially.
Right.
And then which this is relevant for the near future, but the home is going to go in front of that building. So.
After you would come in for a combination plat.
Exactly, yeah. This is going to be when we come in for a combination.
All right, so it's further back off the street. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a little bit clearer. I think this is a copy. Where their home now is
So just being cognizant of the time frames that have been allotted here, you've got a couple more minutes to wrap
okay.
up. Before the city will have a chance for a rebuttal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's pretty straightforward. I've stated the facts. It's not much more complicated than that. I gave you the time periods between the spring. March is when the property was acquired. May 25th was the deadline to take the home down. It came down late April, May, some point. And the structure in the back of the property still stands. We got conditional approval to take it down based upon tonight's decision. DRB passed that. So I don't think I have anything else to add at this time, just that there was no ill intent. It was just a situation they weren't quite sure how to handle, knew that the meetings weren't occurring. We can, if necessary, provide some more information or insight into that, but I hope that we find tonight that it's not necessary and that we can unanimously approve this. So the other thing I will point out is that we went through the explanation at the DRB about the property as well, and they understood the vision of it and approved and recommended that you heard that it be approved with this board. So I hope that you would take that into consideration. And then one final thing, Mr. Roberts also had pointed out that he wanted to be on record that he approved this and understood that. So I don't know where that goes on record, but I think that definitely helps us as well.
Okay. On record because this is all recorded.
Good. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Kind. Yes, sir.
So with that, now the city's opportunity for, as I understand it, for a rebuttal period of 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes. Is there any rebuttal to what you heard tonight?
No, there's not.
Each party has an opportunity for a closing statement of up to 5 minutes. And would the city attorney please help me? Which order would the closing
We
statements
would
go
have
in?
the city go first if they chose.
Okay, just in conclusion, based upon the situation of the insurance company asking the owner to resolve the issue of not being able to insure the property or that piece of that structure, it's staff's opinion that the owner was doing their due diligence and looking out for the safety and the welfare of not only themselves but the community. Also, the applicant has been working with staff to try to resolve the issue and is doing the best that they can to follow the rules and regulations since that time.
Okay. Is that you concluded?
Yes.
Okay. If the applicant, you have an opportunity to make any closing comments if you care. Up to 5 minutes.
Okay, I won't take up 5. I think that I summarized it well before, but I do think it is important to note that given this situation that safety and well-being was part of their concern. Robin brought that up. I may have brought it up before, but just the condition of the property and knowing there's another home that's really close to this one next door. I know this is not favorable. That's why the city has the ordinance. But I think that there is a hardship here and a weird situation with a pandemic that I am certain that this citizen would have gone through the proper channels if things had been open. They had understood. So I know there's no ill intent there. So I hope that would be in consideration. And I don't know if you have any more questions for me on my time on the floor.
I don't believe so. I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just respectfully hope that you would consider reversing that decision and allowing this family to move forward with their building project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'd ask the city attorney to restate what our options are as a board.
Thank you. At this time, the matter is within the board's consideration. Note that the city has the burden of proof, proving that the decision was appropriate. The board has the option, and it reads as follows in the bylaws. On secondary variances and interpretations, the board may vote to affirm an order, requirement, or decision, wholly or partly, may reverse an order, requirement, or decision, wholly or partly, or clarify by presenting an interpretation of the text in the form of a statement of clarification. That's the formal statement. In short, you can affirm in part, all completely or in part, deny completely or in part, or modify the decision through a clarification statement.
Okay, thank you. I'd make a motion to reverse the Community Development Director's decision in whole, which would allow the applicants to move forward with building permit.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I think the applicant made a very strong case, and we'll leave it at that. All those in favor of reversing the Community Development Director's decision in whole, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion to reverse was passed unanimously. So continue to work with staff, and also be mindful of the square footage limitations on a guest home. I see it's a 1,600 plus right now. Good luck with your project. Okay, the next item on our agenda, it's now 8:45, is old business. The only old business that I would, I learned something this with emails, city emails. And Robin, maybe you can help me with this. I lost access to my city email. It turned out I wasn't on we're not on a schedule for updating our passwords, it appears.
Correct. So you're not going to get a warning that your password would expire. So if you're accessing your city email, then you can't get in. In all likelihood, that's the issue. So you can send an email to support@cityofmiltonga.us from another obvious email
Just
address.
so I have sent that email for months, and Cody has tried many times. There's been ticket after ticket. I still have not heard a response.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's been a
Robin will get you. She got me in 24 hours.
Yeah, so that's what, you haven't gotten a response from the support?
Correct.
Same with
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Same, okay, well, I don't know, I did mention it to the IT manager, and that's what he told me, so he must have been aware. So I know, let me see if,
Well, what I would suggest, I will send you my ticket information. Embedded in there, and it's not very evident, is a new password. And then what I found myself having to do was I had to log on to Microsoft Exchange correctly with that new password. It then allowed me to choose my own password.
but I'm not sure that they would be given the same password.
No. What I'm saying is in the ticket, it says it's closed.
But I think what they're saying is they haven't gotten.
You haven't even gotten the ticket.
Right.
Okay.
I haven't.
All right. Well,
You got lucky.
yeah. Preferential treatment, I guess. But
Right, that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so we'll, let me talk to the IT person tomorrow and just say, hey, heads up. So if, in the next day or two, if you can send again that request to support at City of Milton, saying your issues, and then I'll make sure he's looking out for
Support
it.
at
City of Milton, GA.us.
And how often do the passwords expire?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think he can kind of elongate it, make it a longer term since you're not getting notices. I mean, he doesn't want to turn it off altogether just for safety reasons. So I can ask him.
Yeah, that'd be good. Some good guidance. I mean, if he did it for a year, I think that would be helpful. And then we all knew that, the conclusion of the year to go.
I work with a lot of, financial, programs, and they don't immediately lock you out once you need to update your password. You log in and then says your password's expired, you need to create it. What
Right,
you're
and-
saying is we're going to be locked out and
And
have to
I don't
remember.
understand why it's not giving you a notice. He just made that statement up front, saying y'all aren't getting notices. Whether that's just, I can't really explain that, but.
So this continues to be an old business item that will plague us.
I'm in my email, my city email, but yeah, I'm sure.
We're trying to all be compliant to this, and I appreciate
I
the
know.
board trying to be compliant in open records, et cetera. Next item was new business, item 9, and that one specific item was voting on our 2021 meeting schedule. We had proposed a meeting schedule last month for everyone to consider, and it was included in our packets this month. Is there any discussion before I make a motion to adopt? Okay, I'd make a motion then to adopt the 2021 meeting schedule, which would continue our meetings the third Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion?
Are we okay with the 12/21?
Don't know where I'll be at that point.
It just seems close to Christmas.
Yeah.
But comment. I
Or October.
The challenge with changing, yes, is advertising and the applicants' preparedness, and
Well, if you guys are all okay with it.
I personally don't have an issue with it.
I think so long as we have a quorum, if somebody is out for the holidays or whatever, we can just be prepared for that. Mindful of that date when you're making plans, and not that you can't make plans, but just let Chair know if you're planning to be gone so we can make sure just like tonight, we're missing 2 people, but can still function fine, so.
Okay, so all those in favor in adopting the 2021 proposed third Tuesday of the month, meetings at 6 p.m., say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we've adopted the 2021 calendar. And I'd ask staff to please make sure the chambers is reserved for those meeting times. Any other new business? I would just make a general comment that I feel that staff, both Robin and Shuba, were very helpful in taking the reins tonight in managing this meeting. You guys have kind of thrust into this board and the handlings of this board over the last couple of months, and I thought tonight was handled, in leading up, all the preparation up to tonight, was handled quite well. Thank you.
Welcome.
And to our city attorney who helped us through the appeals process seamlessly. Appreciate that as well. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.